Welcome to the world of Viking resilience against the biting Nordic winter. Tonight, we're journeying back to a time when survival meant more than just enduring the cold. It was a testament to the spirit of those who called Scandinavia home. Now, settle in, find that cozy spot, and let your shoulders relax. Let the day's worries drift away like snow melting in the spring sun. Make yourself comfortable, perhaps with a warm drink in hand. Where are you tuning in from tonight? And what time is it for you? Evening, or perhaps a very early morning in your wonderfully busy life? I hope your listening post is a snug one, away from any blustering winds. If you're enjoying these journeys through history, consider tapping that follow button to join our growing community of minds. Our story begins in ancient Scandinavia, where communities learned to embrace the stark beauty and formidable challenges of the long winter. Imagine farmers, their hands raw from pulling stubborn roots before the frost, and hunters tracking game through hushed, snow-laden forests. We'll uncover how their ingenuity, their close-knit families, and their deep respect for the natural world allowed them to not just survive, but truly thrive through those harsh months. The crisp air carried the clean scent of pine needles as Astrid carefully laid out their winter stores. Dried fish, their silvery skins brittle, were stacked beside mounds of root vegetables dug from the earth before the first true cold. She ran a calloused hand over a sack of barley, its kernels rough beneath her touch. This meticulous work, undertaken daily, was a quiet defense against the coming silence of the long frost. Meanwhile, in the partially reinforced longhouse, Bjorn checked the sinew binding on his bow, his gaze distant, already tracking the movements of game in the thinning woods. His preparations were a dance with time, a race against the dwindling daylight that signaled the season's inevitable turn. Beyond the immediate tasks of preservation, a deeper rhythm pulsed through Hrafnfjord. The sun dipped lower each day, painting the sky with shades of amber and rose that were short-lived. The men and women worked in a shared purpose, their movements economical and their silences filled with an understanding born of generations. Longhouses were being reinforced with thicker mud and straw. Animal hides, scraped clean and treated, were hung to dry, and every usable item was inventoried with a careful hand. This collective effort was the community's shield, a bulwark against the encroaching chill and the potential scarcity that followed in its wake. The memory of past winters, particularly the one when the sea ice locked them in for weeks longer than usual, lent an urgency to their preparations. Elder Maeve, her hands gnarled like ancient tree roots, sat by the hearth, weaving a new blanket with steady, practiced movements. Her gaze often drifted to the younger children, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the growing quiet outside. She saw in their bright eyes the future of Hrafnfjord, a future dependent on the wisdom passed down and the diligence with which it was applied. Her weaving was more than just the creation of warmth. It was a physical manifestation of continuity, a thread connecting them to those who had endured before. Bjorn, his mind fixed on the dwindling game, decided to venture further into the forested hills than he usually did at this time of year. The usual hunting grounds offered less and less, a stark reminder of the season's demands. His son, young Finn, eager to prove himself, accompanied him, his movements still a little too clumsy, his steps too loud on the frosted ground. Finn's ambition was palpable, a desire to learn the hunter's quiet, observant ways, a skill as essential to their survival as the food itself. The satisfaction of a successful hunt would not only feed his family, but also offer a much-needed bounty for the entire settlement. The first true bite of frost had arrived, coating the world in a delicate layer of ice that crunched underfoot with each step. The sea, usually a source of sustenance and trade, had grown choppier, its waves tipped with white, signaling the end of extensive seafaring for the year. The community huddled closer to their hearths, their longhouses now their primary refuge from the biting air. The lingering scent of woodsmoke, a comforting anchor, mingled with the faint, distant cry of a seabird, a lonely sound against the growing stillness of the landscape. The season of plenty had officially given way to the season of careful rationing. The encroaching frost meant that Bjorn's hunt had become a more serious endeavor, pushing him deeper into the hills where the game was scarcer, but perhaps less disturbed. He and Finn moved with a shared purpose, though Bjorn's every action was deliberate, every glance an assessment of the land. The crunch of frozen leaves underfoot seemed amplified in the quiet, a constant reminder of their intrusion into the wild's domain. Bjorn knew that securing enough meat was no longer just about providing for his own, but about contributing to a communal store that would see them all through the leanest months. The diminishing availability of fresh meat was a quiet tension, a constant pressure felt by every hunter. As darkness lengthened its hold, the longhouse became the beating heart of their existence. Inside, Astrid and her children gathered around the central hearth, its flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The smell of simmering broth, rich with dried herbs, was a comforting presence, a promise of warmth and nourishment. Elder Maeve, her voice a low murmur, began to tell a story, her words weaving a spell of ancient times, of frost giants and the spirits of the frozen earth. This ritual was more than just entertainment. It was a way to imbue the harsh reality of their present with the resilience and perseverance of their ancestors. The transmission of such stories was vital, a cultural practice that strengthened their resolve and provided a shared framework for understanding the challenges they faced. Maeve's tales offered not only comfort, but also lessons in enduring hardship, in finding hope even when the world outside seemed to offer none. The children, their faces illuminated by the firelight, listened intently, absorbing not just the words, but the feeling of connection to a lineage stretching back through countless winters. This shared experience, this act of remembering and retelling, was a powerful tool against the psychological impact of the encroaching isolation. In a different part of the fjord, young Kalen, his eyes alight with ambition, consulted with Rolf, an older seafarer whose face was etched with the lines of sun and sea spray. Kalen was eager to make one last trading voyage before the sea became completely impassable, a risky endeavor that Rolf viewed with a seasoned sailor's caution. The preparations for Kalen's short journey involved securing the longship, ensuring its timbers were sound, and stocking provisions that would see them through a potentially swift return. The community watched Kalen's preparations with a mixture of admiration for his daring and a shared apprehension for the dangers he might face. Rolf's gentle but firm counsel, urging prudence and awaiting for calmer seas, represented a subtle challenge to Kalen's youthful drive. The older man's wisdom, born from years of navigating treacherous waters, clashed with the younger man's eagerness for the potential riches of trade and exploration. This difference in perspective, this tension between experience and ambition, was a common thread in many communities. But here, it played out against the stark backdrop of an unforgiving season. The community's collective investment in their seafaring capabilities meant that Kalen's success or failure had implications far beyond his own fortune. Bjorn returned from his extended hunt, the successful outcome evident in the significant weight of the carcass he and Finn managed to haul back. The kill, a strong stag, was a prize that would sustain several families for many days, a welcome relief from the constant worry of diminishing supplies. The process of butchering the animal became a shared task, a testament to the community's interdependence. Bjorn's generosity in sharing his bounty and the visible gratitude of those who received it further strengthened the bonds that held Hrafnfjord together. This tangible result of his effort was a direct counter to the mounting pressures of survival. The availability of this fresh meat served as a stark contrast to the days of carefully preserved rations, alleviating immediate survival pressures and allowing for a brief moment of communal triumph. The sharp, clean scent of the meat, still carrying the wildness of the forest, filled the air around the butchering site. The rough texture of the hide, painstakingly scraped, promised warmth and durability for the coming months. This successful hunt was a vital contribution to the collective effort, demonstrating how individual skill and perseverance directly benefited the entire settlement, a crucial element in their struggle against the natural world. Kalen's ambitious voyage ended not with a full hold of trade goods, but with a swift return to Hrafnfjord. A sudden storm had driven him back, the encroaching ice making further progress both impossible and dangerously foolhardy. His longship, though still seaworthy, bore the marks of its encounter with the elements. The news of his early return was met with a complex mix of relief that he was safe and a quiet disappointment about the lost opportunities for trade. The community, however, rallied quickly, their shared investment in the longship manifesting as a collective effort to assess and begin the necessary repairs. Rolf's earlier warnings, spoken with the weight of experience, were implicitly acknowledged in the sight of the damaged vessel. The chilling touch of ice that had formed on the ship's railings served as a stark reminder of the environmental realities that had dictated Kaelen's premature return. The dull thud of hammers on newly replaced timbers echoed across the fjord as the work began, a testament to their resilience and their ability to adapt their technology. The raw, briny smell of the sea clung to the vessel, a persistent scent of both opportunity and peril that defined their relationship with the waters. Astrid continued her work indoors, joining other women in the longhouse, including elder Maeve, to finish spinning and weaving the precious wool. Their nimble fingers moved with practiced efficiency, transforming raw fleece into warm tunics and sturdy cloaks, essential garments that would protect them from the biting cold that now seemed to seep through even the most reinforced walls. The soft, yielding feel of the spun wool was a familiar comfort, a stark contrast to the harshness of the external world. This shared task, undertaken with mutual support, fostered a quiet pride in their collective craft, a tangible demonstration of its direct impact on everyone's well-being. The rhythmic click of weaving shuttles created a steady cadence, a sound of purposeful creation that filled the communal space. Elder Maeve, with her decades of experience, passed on finer points of her skill, demonstrating how to create stronger seams and more insulating weaves, knowledge that would translate directly into greater comfort and protection for the entire community. This shared labor, this pooling of skills and effort, was a direct test of their community solidarity, a conscious effort to produce enough warm clothing for all, a communal goal achieved through countless individual contributions. The faint, pleasant smell of lanolin in the wool was a subtle but pervasive reminder of their interconnectedness. Bjorn ventured out once more, this time to check the snares he had set for smaller game in the snow-covered woods, and to inspect the fishing nets he had placed in a nearby frozen river. Young Finn accompanied him, his presence a testament to his growing understanding of the need for patience and quiet observation. With the land blanketed in snow and ice, new strategies were required for sustenance, and the reliance on stored food intensified, though attempts to supplement it continued. The silence of the snow-covered landscape could feel isolating, a vast expanse that seemed to absorb all sound, emphasizing the minimal returns from their efforts. The frigid touch of snowmelt on Bjorn's fingers as he checked a snare was a sharp reminder of the season's grip. The sharp, metallic scent of the frozen river hung in the air, a scent of life held captive. The stillness of the landscape was broken only by the crunch of their boots, each step a conscious effort against the deep snow. Bjorn imparted his knowledge to Finn, emphasizing how the changing environment demanded a shift in tactics, a willingness to persevere even when the rewards were meager. This was a crucial lesson in survival, a demonstration of how to adapt to the diminishing opportunities as winter progressed. Elder Maeve gathered the younger children, including Finn, around her, her weathered hands holding dried herbs as examples. She began to teach them the old ways of identifying edible plants that might still be found beneath the snow, and the profound importance of respecting the spirits of the land, which they believed held sway over the seasons. The children listened with wide eyes, their attention focused on the elders' every gesture, absorbing vital information that had sustained their people for generations. Maeve's calm authority and her deep, intuitive understanding of the natural world guided their learning, connecting them to a heritage of practical survival. The rough texture of Maeve's gestures as she explained the properties of a particular herb added a tactile dimension to the lesson, making the abstract concepts more tangible. The faint, earthy smell of dried plants she used as visual aids filled the small space where they sat. This knowledge transmission was essential, a crucial link in the chain of survival, ensuring that the skills and understanding needed to navigate the harsh environment would continue into the future. The hushed stillness of the children's attention underscored the importance of this passing of wisdom, a process that secured the continuity of their way of life. The community gathered for a midwinter feast, a celebration born from the deep-seated need to acknowledge their survival of the year's harshest point. Astrid contributed her preserved meats and vegetables, their flavors deepened by months of careful storage. Bjorn shared some of his recent catch, a testament to his enduring skill and determination. Despite the ongoing hardships, the communal feast served as a vital morale booster, a conscious act of coming together to reaffirm their shared bonds and their collective commitment to enduring. The act of sharing food and small gifts was a powerful statement of mutual dependency, reinforcing their unity. The rich, smoky flavor of roasted preserved meat, a welcome change from the often plain fare of daily meals, was a highlight of the feast. The sweet taste of honey cakes, a rare treat, offered a burst of sweetness that contrasted with the general scarcity. The resonant sound of communal singing filled the longhouse, a powerful expression of their shared resilience and their unyielding spirit. This gathering was more than just a meal. It was a cultural mechanism designed to celebrate their collective strength, a powerful antidote to the isolating forces that winter could impose. The community found their rhythm in this moment of shared joy and thankfulness. The crispness that had settled over Hrafnafjord in the weeks prior now deepened into a biting cold. Bjorn, his breath misting in the still air, guided his young son Finn through the hushed, snow-laden trees. Bjorn, a man whose movements spoke of quiet efficiency born of long winters, pulled his woolen tunic tighter, the coarse fibers a familiar reassurance against his skin. He scanned the undergrowth, his eyes sharp for the telltale signs of movement, for the scarce game that remained accessible as the land surrendered to the frost. Finn, his face rosy from the cold, trotted close behind his father, his small hands tucked deep within his own rough tunic. He mirrored Bjorn's focused gaze, eager to learn the subtle language of the forest, to understand the signs that whispered of life and sustenance amidst the frozen stillness. The trees themselves seemed to hold their breath, their branches burdened with a fresh dusting of snow that muffled the sounds of their passage, creating an immense quietude, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the frozen leaves scattered beneath the snow. The sea, a constant source of both sustenance and connection to the wider world, had become less predictable, its surface now a choppy, gray expanse, hinting at the dangers of open water. This shift marked a significant turning point for Hrafnfjord, signaling the end of extended voyages and reinforcing the community's turn inward, towards the longhouses and their carefully managed stores. The days grew shorter, casting longer shadows that reached out like grasping fingers, and each passing hour brought a subtle but undeniable deepening of the winter's grip. Back in the settlement, a quiet industry continued. Neighborly visits became more frequent, brief exchanges of news, and shared observations about the intensifying cold. A shared understanding passed between people. They acknowledged the collective challenge that lay ahead, a silent pact formed by the shared experience of preparing for the harsh season. This camaraderie, a thread woven through their daily lives, provided a quiet strength as they faced the encroaching silence and the demands of the land. Bjorn paused, holding up a hand to signal Finn to halt. He pointed towards a patch of disturbed snow, a faint track leading into a thicker stand of pines. The diminishing availability of fresh meat was a constant source of tension, requiring greater effort and deeper ventures into the wilderness. The effort required to secure even a small portion of sustenance was a growing concern, as the natural supply continued its steady decline, a stark reminder of the stakes involved in their winter sustenance. Bjorn paused, holding up a hand to signal Finn to halt. He pointed towards a patch of disturbed snow, a faint track leading into a thicker stand of pines. The diminishing availability of fresh meat was a constant source of tension, requiring greater effort and deeper ventures into the wilderness. The effort required to secure even a small portion of sustenance was a growing concern, as the natural supply continued its steady decline, a stark reminder of the stakes involved in their winter sustenance. As Bjorn moved cautiously forward, Finn watched his father's every step, absorbing the hunter's deliberate pace and keen observation. The faint, distant cry of a seabird, a lone sentinel against the vast expanse of gray sky, underscored the isolation of their current pursuit. The taste of the dried berries Bjorn offered Finn earlier, slightly bitter but filling, lingered on the boy's tongue, a small but vital reminder of the need to make do with what the land offered, no matter how meager. The forest floor, carpeted in a delicate layer of frost, crunched audibly with each step they took. This sound, sharp and distinct in the otherwise still air, was a constant reminder of how the land itself had transformed, now demanding a different approach from those who sought its bounty. Bjorn continued his steady progress, his gaze never wavering from the subtle signs that might lead them to a successful hunt, a necessary endeavor to sustain his family through the coming months. The diminishing daylight now cast long, wavering shadows that stretched and distorted the familiar shapes of the trees, adding an eerie quality to their surroundings. This was the time when the land demanded the utmost respect and understanding, a period of transition where old certainties gave way to new challenges. Bjorn knew that success in these deeper woods required not just skill, but a deep understanding of the subtle shifts in the environment, an awareness honed over many years of living by the rhythm of the seasons. Bjorn's experienced eyes followed the faint imprint in the snow, a trail left by a deer that had passed through some hours earlier. He calculated the animal's likely direction, his mind piecing together the fragmented clues. The tension of the hunt lay in this careful observation, in the quiet dance of deduction and anticipation, as he worked to secure sustenance for his family from a land that offered its gifts with increasing reluctance. The effort involved was significant, a stark contrast to the more plentiful days of harvest. Finn, eager to contribute, pointed towards a cluster of dark shapes on a low-hanging branch. Bjorn nodded, recognizing them as dried berries, still clinging to their stems despite the frost. He carefully plucked a few, their texture slightly leathery, and offered them to Finn. The taste, a mix of sweetness and a faint, pleasant bitterness. These small provisions, gathered during more abundant times, were now crucial, each morsel carefully conserved for moments like these, a testament to the foresight required to endure the coming scarcity. The quiet camaraderie that had settled over Hafnarfjord in the days leading up to the frost was now a more personal affair, a quiet understanding between father and son as they navigated the transformed landscape. Neighborly visits, though less frequent, were filled with shared observations and a quiet acknowledgement of the shared challenge. This communal spirit, a bedrock of their society, offered a sense of shared purpose as they all turned their attention to the immediate demands of the encroaching winter, the constant effort to secure what was needed. The frost had brought a profound stillness, a transformation of the familiar world that demanded new routines and a shift in daily focus. This was more than just a change in temperature. It was a fundamental alteration of their environment, moving them from the relative ease of the harvest season into the demanding period of winter scarcity. Bjorn understood that his role, and the roles of all the hunters and gatherers, became even more critical now, their success or failure directly impacting the well-being of the entire community. As they moved deeper into the hushed woods, the distant cry of a single seabird echoed across the otherwise silent expanse, a lonely sound that seemed to emphasize the vastness of the land and the smallness of their endeavor. The crisp air carried the faint, clean scent of pine, a constant presence in this part of the world. Bjorn's careful steps and Finn's attentive presence were a quiet testament to the ongoing human effort to adapt and survive, even as the natural world presented its most formidable challenges, a continuous test of their resilience. Such moments shaped the character of Norse living. As the days grew shorter, the longhouse of Astrid's family, like others in Hrafnifjord, transformed into the heart of their world. The wind howled with a keener edge now, and the lingering daylight offered little warmth, driving the community closer to the central hearth. Astrid meticulously sorted bundles of dried flax, her fingers accustomed to the work, preparing them for the spinning wheels that would soon whir through the long evenings. Her youngest, little Torvin, his nose already dusted with soot from a recent visit to the fire, sat close to his mother, his small hands trying to imitate her movements with a piece of rough wool. Even in the quiet moments, the chill seeped in, a constant reminder of the encroaching winter's power. Meanwhile, Elder Maeve sat near the fire's comforting glow, her gnarled hands deftly guiding a spindle, transforming raw wool into fine thread. Her eyes, though aged, held a sharp wisdom, and her gaze often settled on the younger children, their faces alight with a mixture of awe and weariness. Maeve began to speak, her voice a low rumble that cut through the murmur of the longhouse. She spoke of the ancient tales, stories whispered down through countless winters, of the frost giants who roamed the mountains, and the spirits of the frozen land. These were not mere bedtime stories. They were lessons woven into the fabric of their survival, offering explanations for the harshness they faced, and imbuing the cold with a sense of purpose and order, even if that purpose was formidable. The social fabric of Hrafnfjord tightened as the external world grew more forbidding. Family bonds, already strong, found new depth in the shared confinement and the mutual reliance that winter demanded. The necessity of working together extended beyond the immediate family, creating a tapestry of shared tasks and shared anxieties. When one hearth grew cold, a neighbor might offer embers. When food stores dwindled, the fruits of another's hunt were shared. This interdependence was not merely an act of kindness. It was a practical strategy for survival, ensuring that no one was left to face the biting cold and gnawing hunger alone. The elders' stories, therefore, served a purpose far beyond mere entertainment. They reinforced the importance of this collective spirit, reminding them that their shared heritage and shared struggles were their greatest strengths against the overwhelming power of nature. The lengthening shadows and the deepening cold served as potent reminders of the island's unforgiving nature. The dwindling sunlight meant less time for essential tasks outside the longhouse, and the pervasive chill required constant vigilance. Astrid found herself frequently drawing her shawl tighter, even as she worked near the fire. The very act of living through these shortened days was a testament to their resilience, but it also underscored the delicate balance they maintained. The stories Maeve told, filled with ancient heroes and their battles against the elements, provided a cultural framework for understanding and enduring these challenges. They connected the present hardship to a long lineage of people who had faced similar trials, fostering a sense of continuity and hope that the harshest season, like all things, would eventually pass. This period brought a unique tension, the stark reality of winter's grip versus the deep-seated cultural need for hope and the continuation of life's rituals. The practicalities of survival, preserving food, mending tools, and ensuring warmth were paramount. Yet the spirit of the people, their will to endure and to find meaning in the darkness, relied heavily on the traditions and stories that bound them together. The rhythmic whirring of the spinning wheels, a sound that became commonplace within the longhouses, was more than just the making of cloth. It was a percussive beat against the silence of the snow, a declaration that life, in its quietest and most determined forms, persisted. The warmth radiating from the hearth offered a tangible comfort against the chilled skin, a welcome sensation after hours spent outside gathering wood or tending to the few remaining animals. The scent of simmering broth, a mix of dried herbs and preserved meats, filled the longhouse, a comforting anchor in the often bleak reality of the season. The murmur of voices, hushed and intimate in the firelight, spoke of shared experiences and quiet anxieties, but also of a resilient spirit that refused to be extinguished by the encroaching darkness. The process of spinning wool itself was a methodical rhythm, a dance of hands and fiber. Astrid watched her children, their small faces intent, as they learned to coax thread from the rough wool. This skill, passed down from generations of women in Hafrafjord, was essential. The clothing they created provided not just comfort, but also vital protection against the biting winds and the creeping frost that found its way even into the most well-built structures. A poorly made tunic could mean shivering nights and susceptibility to the sicknesses that winter often brought. This shared labor, this creation of warmth, was a silent but powerful testament to their communal bonds. Maeve, observing the children, would sometimes interject with a snippet of advice, a correction delivered with a gentle touch. "The wool needs to flow, little ones, not be forced," she might say, her voice soft. These moments were interspersed with tales of how the first settlers learned to tame the wild sheep, a testament to their adaptability. It was said that even the most ancient sagas spoke of women weaving cloaks that could ward off the fiercest blizzards, though modern scholars debate the literal truth of such claims, often suggesting they represent a metaphorical representation of deep community cohesion rather than a magical attribute of the cloth itself. As the evenings deepened, the longhouse became a vibrant hub of activity. Outside, the world lay hushed and white, but within, life pulsed with purpose. Mending tools, sharpening knives, and carving small figures from bone filled the hours when the chill outside made any venture unwelcome. The smell of simmering broth was a constant, comforting presence, a reminder of the carefully preserved stores that would sustain them. These were not idle hours. Each task contributed to the collective survival, weaving a stronger social fabric that could withstand the winter's harshness. This period saw the quiet transfer of essential knowledge. The younger children learned to identify the different types of wood best suited for fuel, understanding that some burned longer and hotter, providing more sustained warmth. They watched their elders carefully ration dried fruits and preserved meats, learning the importance of every morsel. Even simple tasks like how to bank the fire to keep embers alive until morning held significant weight. The elders, in turn, ensured that these practical lessons were accompanied by the stories and beliefs that gave context to their lives, reinforcing their cultural identity. The elders' recounting of ancient legends often included details about specific constellations visible in the clear winter skies, knowledge that aided navigation in past eras and which still held a place in their understanding of the world's cycles. One such tale spoke of a great feast held during the deepest part of winter, a celebration of resilience and a prayer for the sun's return. This tradition, perhaps originating as a way to boost morale during the leanest months, had become deeply ingrained, a ritual that reaffirmed their collective spirit. There was a subtle joke shared between Astrid and her neighbor Hild as they worked on a particularly stubborn piece of mending. Hild, her tongue poking out in concentration, declared that her needle seemed to have a mind of its own, actively trying to snag every loose thread. Astrid responded with a laugh, agreeing that her own thread appeared to be actively avoiding her attempts to guide it. These small moments of levity, brief sparks of amusement in the face of hardship, were vital, allowing the people to maintain their spirits. The careful preparation of food was an ongoing process. Astrid ensured that the dried fish, cured with salt and smoke, were stored in cool, dry earthenware pots. The root vegetables, dug from the earth before the deepest frost, were kept in a cellar beneath the longhouse, providing a vital source of sustenance. The memory of past lean winters, where food ran scarce, remained a potent motivator. The communal nature of preparing and sharing these stores, however, meant that even in times of potential scarcity, the overall well-being of the community was prioritized, fostering a sense of shared responsibility. The longhouse, with its central hearth and close-knit families, became a symbol of their enduring culture. The skills passed down, from the weaving of warm cloth to the preservation of food, were not merely practical techniques, but also the threads that bound generations together. The shared experience of enduring the winter, of finding warmth and solace in each other's company, fostered a deep sense of belonging. This collective resilience, this ability to find light in the darkness, was a defining characteristic of their lives. The shared weaving of the village's warmth took deeper root among the people. The sharp, clean scent of pine needles still clung to the air, a reminder of the recent harvest and the relative plenty that had been. Yet, as the sun's arc noticeably shortened, a different urgency began to grip the folk of Hrafnfjord. The sea, once a highway for trade and sustenance, now churned with a restless energy, its waves growing rougher, hinting at the storms that would soon lock the fjords in icy silence. It was in this liminal space, between the last of summer's warmth and winter's full rain, that Kalin, a young seafarer whose ambition burned as brightly as any hearth fire, began preparing his vessel for one final voyage. His gaze, often fixed on the horizon, now scanned the familiar timbers of his longship, a sturdy craft that had carried him on many voyages, but which seemed a fragile thing against the approaching tempestuous season. Kalin's plans were met with a quiet caution by Rolf, a seasoned sailor whose face was a roadmap of countless journeys, each line etched by sun, wind, and the sea's fickle temper. Rolf, his voice roughened by the same sea air, spoke of the darkening skies and the treacherous currents that would soon make navigation a perilous gamble, even for the most skilled. He recounted how the biting spray, once invigorating, would soon turn to shards of ice, and how the very timbers of the ship would groan under the immense pressure of ice floes. This exchange between the eager youth and the experienced elder represented more than just a difference in opinion. It highlighted a growing generational divergence in assessing risk, with Kalin drawn by the lure of potential gain and the need to acquire goods not readily available in their isolated fjord, while Rolf felt the weighty burden of hard-won experience, urging prudence as the land prepared for its deep slumber. The preparations for Kalin's journey were a communal affair, drawing the attention of many in the settlement. While the majority focused on fortifying their homes and preserving their stores, A small contingent helped secure the longship, its dark wood gleaming with fresh applications of tar, a substance known for its protective qualities against water and the insidious creep of decay. The air around the ship's mooring was alive with the rhythmic thud of hammers and the sharp metallic scent of newly driven rivets, sounds that usually signaled expansion and opportunity, but now carried a subtle undertone of apprehension. Many watched from a distance, their expressions a mixture of admiration for Kalen's daring spirit and a shared anxiety about the wisdom of challenging the sea at this precarious time of year. For the memory of ships lost to the winter's wrath was a somber thread woven into the fabric of their history. This need to seek out goods from other settlements, even as the harsh season encroached, underscored a fundamental aspect of their existence, a reliance on exchange for items they could not produce themselves. Whether it was finer crafted tools, specific herbs for healing, or decorative items that brought beauty to their longhouses, the outside world held necessities that tempered the self-sufficiency of their isolated community. The timing of Kalen's departure, therefore, was dictated not merely by his personal ambition, but by a practical imperative to replenish their stores before the waterways froze solid, effectively cutting them off from all but the most immediate and essential needs. The success of his voyage or its failure would have tangible consequences for the entire community, influencing the availability of goods and the resilience of their collective stores against the coming scarcity. The tension inherent in Kalen's decision resonated through the community, for it was not simply about a single voyage, but about a fundamental debate between youthful drive and seasoned wisdom. Kalen, his spirit buoyed by the receding threat of immediate frost, saw opportunity where Rolf saw only escalating danger. The younger seafarer felt a deep-seated need to prove his capabilities, to forge his own path and contribute to the prosperity of Hrafnafjord in ways that went beyond the daily routines of farming and hunting. Yet Rolf's counsel, born from years spent battling the elements, carried the weight of unspoken dangers and the stark reality of what the sea could reclaim. This subtle challenge, rooted in different understandings of the world and their place within it, became a focal point as the community contemplated the risks and rewards of such ventures. As Kalen's longship finally pulled away from the shore, its timbers creaking with the strain against the choppy water, a palpable silence fell over those who remained. The sting of the salt spray, carried on the strengthening breeze, seemed to cling to their faces, a visceral reminder of the sea's power and Kalen's daring foray into its increasingly formidable embrace. The scent of tar, so potent during the preparations, now mingled with the raw, briny smell of the ocean itself, a scent that spoke of both potential bounty and the ever-present threat of the deep. The community watched until the ship was but a distant speck, a silent testament to the enduring human spirit that sought to connect and exchange, even when the world around them prepared for a season of isolation and quiet endurance. Through these preparations and the underlying debates about risk, the folk of Hrafnfjord had reaffirmed the delicate balance between progress and survival. Bjorn's return was not marked by the boastful shouts of a triumphant hunter, but by a quiet, determined strength that spoke of a taxing journey. He walked with a measured tread, the weight of the great elk slung across his shoulders, a testament to his skill and the season's growing scarcity. Young Finn followed close behind, his youthful energy tempered by the palpable relief on his father's face, his own hands stained with the effort of helping drag the impressive carcass through the drifts that now softened the forest floor. This particular hunt had led them further into the hills than usual, where the game, though more elusive, was also less disturbed by the recent presence of others from Hrafnfjord. The villagers of Hrafnfjord, having watched Kaelin's longship depart with its hopeful cargo, turned their thoughts back to the immediate needs of their own survival. And Bjorn's arrival was met with a collective exhalation of relief. The sight of such a substantial kill was more than just a source of fresh meat. It was a promise against the gnawing fear of hunger that loomed with the deepening frost. The air, which had begun to carry the sharp, clean scent of pine needles, now also held the fainter, more potent aroma of the fresh kill as Bjorn approached the communal longhouses. This bounty would sustain many families through the coming days, easing the pressure of dwindling stores. As Bjorn laid his prize down near the central hearth of the main longhouse, a group of women and younger men quickly gathered, their movements purposeful and efficient. The butchering of the elk, a task usually spread over several days, became a shared endeavor, a visible demonstration of the community's combined strength and their ability to harness individual success for the common good. Astrid, her hands still bearing the faint, earthy scent of dried herbs from her own stores, moved among them, ensuring the best cuts were preserved with care. The metallic tang of blood, sharp and raw, mingled with the ever-present smell of wood smoke that drifted from the hearth, a scent that had become a constant comfort. The distribution of the meat was a ritual of interdependence, a practice that underscored the very fabric of their society. Bjorn, rather than keeping the majority for his own family, oversaw its division, ensuring that those with fewer hunters or smaller stores received a fair portion. This act of generosity, met with murmurs of gratitude and nods of respect, solidified the bonds between households. It was a clear reminder that while individual effort yielded the bounty, it was their collective reliance and willingness to share that truly ensured their survival. The satisfying weight of the carcass, now reduced to manageable portions, represented not just sustenance, but a tangible success against the encroaching hardship. This successful hunt directly combated the immediate threat of starvation, a constant worry for those living so far north. Bjorn's skill had provided a crucial buffer, alleviating the pressure on their carefully rationed dried fish and preserved roots. The sharp, clean scent of the fresh meat, so different from the preserved foods, was a welcome change, promising a period of relative abundance. It demonstrated how the dedication of one skilled individual could significantly bolster the collective well-being, especially when that effort was coupled with community support in processing and sharing the spoils. The very act of handling the meat, the rough texture of the cured hides that were already being prepared for winter clothing, and the chill that seeped into the longhouse from the partially open doors for the butchering process, all spoke of the demanding reality of their lives. The satisfying weight of the processed meat, wrapped in clean cloth and ready for storage, was a physical manifestation of their victory against the immediate pressures of the season. It was a reminder of the effort involved, the keen senses required to track game, and the practical skills passed down through generations. The community's ability to efficiently process the entire animal without waste was a point of pride, a skill honed over countless generations. Elder Maeve, though her own days of strenuous hunting were long past, offered quiet counsel on the best methods for preserving different cuts, her gnarled hands demonstrating the proper way to tie bundles of meat for smoking. This transfer of practical knowledge, even in the midst of such a bounty, was crucial. It ensured that the full value of Bjorn's challenging endeavor would be realized, protecting the precious resource from spoilage and making it last as long as possible. The quick, efficient work of the villagers was a testament to their shared understanding of the season's unforgiving nature. Each person knew their role, from those who secured the best parts of the meat for immediate consumption, to those who began the slow, meticulous process of smoking or salting the rest. The sharpness of the knives used, glinting in the firelight, and the sound of them slicing through muscle and bone were sounds of purpose, of life being sustained. The scent of fresh meat, so clean and vital, seemed to push back the chill that had begun to settle in the air. As the largest portions were carried to individual longhouses or designated storage areas, a sense of communal relief settled over Hrafnafjord. The anxiety that had begun to creep in with the shortening days and the increasingly difficult hunts was momentarily abated. This success was not just about filling bellies. It was about reaffirming their collective strength and their ability to provide for one another. Bjorn's long and arduous hunt, though taxing, had yielded a treasure that would see them through a critical period, demonstrating the vital role of skilled hunters in their isolated world. The communal nature of processing such a large kill was something of a Viking tradition, a practical application of their social bonds. It was also a moment of learning for the younger generation, like Finn, who observed the techniques and the careful handling of each part. The fact that Bjorn's effort was so immediately shared also meant that the burden of securing food was felt by everyone, reinforcing the idea that survival was a collective enterprise. The satisfying weight of the cured meat, eventually stored away, represented a significant victory against the challenges of the approaching winter. The process of butchering and preserving the meat required a keen understanding of the natural world, from knowing the best way to prepare the hide, to understanding how to cure the meat to last through the long frost. This knowledge was not theoretical, it was practical, born from experience and passed down through direct observation. The sharp, clean scent of the meat itself was a reminder of the life force that had been harvested, a vital resource to be respected and utilized with care. This event served as a powerful reminder that while the sea might hold opportunities for trade and adventure, As Kalen's journey had shown, the land provided the most immediate and essential sustenance. The forest, with its elusive prey, was a provider that demanded respect, skill, and perseverance. Bjorn's successful hunt was a significant event, offering a tangible sense of security and reinforcing the community's deep connection to the land that sustained them. The successful preservation of this meat would be crucial for the days ahead, when outdoor activities would become even more challenging. The community's collective effort in processing the meat meant that each family received a share, preventing any single household from suffering undue hardship. This equitable distribution was a cornerstone of their social structure, a practical application of the belief that the strength of the community lay in the well-being of all its members. The smell of wood smoke from the hearths, now carrying the promise of cooked meat, was a comforting scent that permeated the twilight air, a stark contrast to the sharp, clean scent of the pine needles that had dominated earlier in the day. This successful hunt, a vital replenishment of their stores, solidified the community's resolve as the deep frost continued to assert its presence. The work of preserving the meat, ensuring it would last through the coming weeks, required patience and skill, qualities that were highly valued. The physical sensation of the chilled air on exposed skin, a constant companion now, made the warmth of the longhouse and the promise of cooked meat all the more welcome. The knowledge that they had such a substantial store of food provided a crucial measure of security against the uncertainties of the season. This period of communal effort left its mark on those who lived through it. The longship, Sea Serpent, groaned as Kalen and his crew limped back into Hrafnfjord's harbor, a shadow of its former glory. Kalen himself, usually brimming with the confidence of a seasoned sailor, wore a grim expression as he surveyed the damage. The journey, meant to be a quick trading venture before winter's grip tightened, had been cut short by a sudden, fierce squall that had driven them eastward, far from their intended destination. As the ship settled against the familiar docks, the biting wind seemed to mock their efforts, and the touch of ice, forming rapidly on the railings, sent a shiver deeper than the cold through the onlookers. The return of the sea serpent brought a mixture of relief and disappointment to the villagers who had gathered to greet them. Relief was paramount. The sea had a fearsome reputation, and seeing Kalen and his men safe on solid ground eased much of the unspoken anxiety that had settled over the fjord during their absence. Yet the sight of the splintered hull and the tattered sail spoke volumes about the costly encounter with the unforgiving elements. The hoped-for goods, finely crafted tools from the southern settlements, and casks of mead to supplement their winter stores, were not among the cargo, and this reality cast a pall over the initial joy of their homecoming. Rolf, Kalen's elder mentor, and a man whose weathered face bore the marks of countless voyages, approached the young captain with a quiet solemnity. Rolf's earlier hesitations about the timing of this voyage were not voiced as reproach, but as a shared understanding of the dangers they had narrowly escaped. He placed a calloused hand on Kalen's shoulder, his gaze steady. "The sea gives and the sea takes," Rolf murmured, his voice raspy from the salt spray, a sentiment that resonated deeply with everyone who understood the risks inherent in their connection to the ocean. The immediate focus, however, shifted from the empty holds to the battered vessel itself. The community, understanding that their longship was not merely a trading vessel, but a vital artery connecting them to the wider world, and a symbol of their seafaring prowess, began to rally around Caelan's plight. Men and women alike converged on the dock, their movements a testament to their ingrained sense of collective responsibility. This shared endeavor to repair the sea serpent was more than just a practical necessity. It was a reaffirmation of their shared investment in their ability to navigate and adapt to the challenges posed by their environment. The environmental reality of the encroaching ice and the ferocity of the storm had forced a stark reckoning with Caelan's ambitious plans. The ship, once a proud symbol of their reach and prosperity, was now a tangible representation of their vulnerability to the raw power of nature. Its damaged state underscored the limitations of their current seafaring technology when faced with such extreme conditions, making the task of repair not just about restoring a vessel, but about re-establishing their confidence and readiness for future journeys. The loss of potential trade goods was a setback, but the damage to the ship was a more profound reminder of the constant negotiation they must maintain with the sea. As the initial assessment of the damage was completed, the dull thud of hammers striking wood began to echo across the harbor. The sharp, briny smell of the sea, clinging stubbornly to the ship's timbers and rigging, was now mingled with the scent of tar and fresh wood as the villagers commenced their work. The raw, unforgiving nature of the materials they worked with, the rough grain of the wood, the stiff, treated fibers of the sailcloth, served as a constant reminder of the forces they were attempting to mend and tame. Every swing of the hammer, every piece of rope retied, was a deliberate act of adaptation. The community's response to the damaged longship was a powerful demonstration of their cooperative spirit. Caelan, humbled by the experience, found himself no longer solely responsible for the success or failure of his ventures. Instead, he worked alongside the others, his youthful energy now channeled into the practical task of repair rather than daring exploration. This collaborative effort highlighted a deep-seated solidarity within Hrafnfjord, where individual misfortunes were quickly absorbed and addressed by the collective strength of the community, ensuring that their means of connection to the outside world would be restored. The tension in this instance was not one of interpersonal conflict, but of a broader challenge in technological adaptation. The longship, a marvel of Viking engineering, was nevertheless susceptible to the unpredictable fury of the elements. The effort to repair it required not only physical labor, but also ingenuity in finding suitable materials and applying traditional techniques to address new kinds of damage. This process tested their ability to adapt their existing knowledge and resources to a specific, urgent need, ensuring that their technological capabilities remained relevant and effective against the constant pressures of their environment. As the day wore on, the work continued with a steady rhythm. The setting sun cast long shadows across the fjord, but the activity on the docks showed no sign of abating. The chilling touch of ice continued to form on the exposed surfaces, a persistent reminder of the winter that had so decisively curtailed Kalen's voyage. The collective focus on mending the sea serpent was a clear signal that, despite the setbacks, their spirit of resilience and their commitment to the sea remained unbroken, ready to face whatever challenges the coming months might bring. The very act of rebuilding the longship became a ritual of sorts, a way for the community to process their experience and reaffirm their shared identity. Each carefully placed plank, each knot tied with practiced hands, contributed to a larger purpose that extended far beyond the immediate repair of a single vessel. It spoke of their enduring connection to the sea, their reliance on each other, and their unwavering determination to overcome the obstacles that their world so frequently presented, even as the air grew colder. The process of restoring the sea serpent demanded a careful assessment of their available resources and the particular skills each member of the community possessed. This collective problem-solving, where experience met youthful eagerness and individual talents were pooled, forged a stronger sense of shared purpose. The resulting unity felt both profound and deeply familiar, a testament to the strength of their communal bonds in the face of adversity. The rough-spun wool, still carrying the faint, pleasant smell of lanolin, felt soft yet resilient beneath Astrid's fingers as she worked the fibers. She sat within the warmth of the longhouse, the flickering lamplight casting dancing shadows across the packed earth floor, while beside her, Elder Maeve's practiced hands moved with a speed that belied her years, her fingers deftly guiding the shuttle through the warp threads of a new tunic. This was more than just a chore. It was a vital communal effort, a demonstration of solidarity against the encroaching cold that seemed to seep through even the stoutest walls. And the shared task of creating warm clothing was paramount for everyone's continued well-being. The air inside the longhouse hummed with the gentle, rhythmic click of weaving shuttles and the soft murmur of conversation as the women worked together, their movements coordinated, their shared purpose evident. Astrid remembered her own mother teaching her this craft, the patient lessons on maintaining an even tension and the importance of strong seams. And now she found herself passing on those same skills to younger women who joined their ranks, their eagerness palpable. The collective creation of these essential garments represented a quiet defiance of the harsh realities of winter, a tangible bulwark against the biting winds and the chill that could easily sap strength and bring sickness. While the elder Maeve, her face a map of a life lived through many winters, paused her weaving to pick up a small bundle of dried herbs, their faint, earthy scent a familiar comfort. She showed the younger women, including a keen-eyed Astrid, how these plants, gathered and preserved during the warmer months, could be brewed into fortifying teas that helped ward off the lingering coughs and aches that often accompanied the deep cold. This knowledge, passed down through countless generations, was as crucial as the wool they spun. It was the wisdom that allowed them to not just endure, but to thrive, even when the world outside lay frozen and still. While the women worked on clothing, the men had been diligently reinforcing the longhouse, chinking gaps with moss and clay, ensuring no precious heat escaped into the biting air. This shared responsibility between the men and women of Hrafnfjord was a cornerstone of their survival, each group understanding that their efforts were intrinsically linked. The success of Bjorn's recent hunt, for example, meant there was more meat to be preserved. But without the warm clothing being made, those same hunters would suffer greatly on their forays into the frosted landscape. The rhythmic clatter of the loom was a constant reminder of the approaching depths of winter, and with it came the understanding that their stored provisions, while carefully managed, would need to last. The ongoing repair of the sea serpent, their longship, was a testament to their hope for future voyages and trade. But for now, their focus had to remain on the immediate needs of the community. The successful completion of these tunics and cloaks would mean that children could venture out to help with necessary tasks without succumbing to the cold, and that the hunters and fishers could maintain their strength. Historically, communities living in harsh climates relied heavily on their ability to adapt their technologies and practices to the seasonal shifts, and the Vikings were masters of this. For them, the long, dark winters were not a time of idleness, but a period of intense craft and preparation, where the skills honed during the brighter months were put to their ultimate test. The intricate patterns woven into the fabric of the tunics were not merely decorative. They were often symbols of protection and good fortune, a way of imbuing their creations with a spiritual strength that mirrored the resilience they sought to cultivate within themselves. There was a quiet pride in the work, a satisfaction that came from seeing the raw wool transform into something so essential and so beautiful. Astrid felt a particular warmth spread through her as she handed a finished tunic, sturdy and well-made, to a younger woman whose own stores of winter clothing were meager. This act of sharing, of ensuring that no one in their close-knit community was left wanting, was a powerful affirmation of their collective identity. It fostered a sense of belonging that no hardship could truly break. One small detail that often amused Astrid was the practice of using sheep's wool from the fattest ewes for the inner lining of cloaks, believing the extra natural oils provided superior warmth and a smoother feel against the skin. This attention to the subtle qualities of their materials underscored their deep understanding of the natural world and their ingenuity in harnessing its resources for their own benefit, a skill honed over centuries of living in this demanding land. Scholars today often debate the precise extent to which Viking communities relied on communal sharing versus individual accumulation of resources during winter. While individual families certainly managed their own stores, the necessity of shared labor, such as this collective effort in producing clothing, and the pooling of resources in times of extreme scarcity, suggests a strong emphasis on interdependence that went beyond mere neighborly kindness. It was a structured response to the ever-present threat of the environment. The constant activity within the longhouse provided a welcome distraction from the howling wind that occasionally buffeted the sturdy structure, a reminder of the immense power of nature outside their walls. The women spoke of their hopes for the coming spring, of the first shoots of green that would eventually push through the snow, and of the seabirds that would return to grace their shores with their calls. These whispered conversations, woven into the fabric of their work, kept their spirits alive. As the day wore on, the lamplight seemed to grow brighter, or perhaps it was just the accumulated warmth of their shared endeavor that made the longhouse feel more inviting. Astrid ran her hand over the soft, yielding texture of a newly finished cloak, its color a deep, earthy brown, and she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was the culmination of weeks of careful preparation, from shearing the sheep to spinning the yarn, and now to the final weaving. The practice of gifting a newly made tunic or cloak to a neighbor or a family member who had suffered a loss or hardship was also a common thread in their social fabric, a way of offering tangible comfort and support during difficult times. This communal spirit, evident in every stitch and every shared story, was as vital to their survival as any stored grain or cured meat. It was the intangible thread that bound them together, stronger than any winter gale. The women continued their work, their hands moving with practiced grace, each garment a testament to their skill and their commitment to one another. The deep, resonant clang of a hammer from the longship repairs outside punctuated the steady rhythm of their weaving, a reminder of the varied efforts underway to secure their community's future. These traditions became part of who they were. Bjorn, his face weathered by more than just the season's chill, ventured deeper into the frosted woods than he had for many weeks. The familiar paths of autumn had vanished beneath a thickening white blanket, forcing him to rely on an older, more instinctual knowledge of the land. Beside him, his son Finn, his small frame bundled against the cold, followed with a quiet determination that belied his years. They were not alone in seeking sustenance. Many in Krapenfjord were turning their thoughts to the leaner offerings the land now provided, seeking to supplement their carefully gathered stores with any fresh meat or fish they could still procure before the deepest freeze fully took hold. The land lay quiet, the snow muffling even the slightest sounds of their passage. Bjorn paused, holding a hand up to signal Finn to stop, his eyes scanning the dense pines. The air, while cold, carried a subtle scent of damp earth beneath the frost, a promise of life that still persisted. Their focus had shifted from the larger game that roamed the open fields in fairer weather, to the more elusive creatures that sought shelter in the dense undergrowth or along the frozen waterways. This change in hunting strategy, born from necessity, demanded a different kind of patience and a sharper attention to the faintest sign. Bjorn moved with a practiced silence, his movements fluid and deliberate as he approached a small, half-frozen stream. He had placed woven nets there days ago, hoping the persistent flow of water, even beneath the thin sheen of ice, might still trap the occasional unwary fish. As he knelt, his fingers numb with the cold, carefully pulled at the thick ropes. The touch of the snowmelt chilling his skin was a stark reminder of how unforgiving the natural world could be when its rhythms shifted. Each successful catch was a small victory against the encroaching scarcity. Finn watched his father, his gaze fixed on the intricate knots of the net and the careful way Bjorn's hands worked. He had learned much about the careful preparation of traps and the vital importance of reading the subtle signs of the forest. The stillness of the snow-covered landscape, however, was a different kind of teacher, one that emphasized the quiet endurance when the world seemed to hold its breath. The silence, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the frozen ground, could feel vast and isolating, a stark contrast to the bustling life of summer. As Bjorn continued his work, he explained to Finn the methods of setting snares for small game, showing him how to disguise them with carefully placed branches and snow. He spoke of the importance of understanding the paths these creatures took, the sheltered spots they favored, and how their survival depended on the same resourcefulness that the people of Hrafnifjord were now practicing. These were not the quick kills of a chase, but the patient art of anticipation, a slow yielding of the land's bounty. The diminishing returns from these efforts were evident. What they managed to secure was a fraction of what a single hunt in the autumn might have yielded, yet every morsel was precious. The physical exertion required to traverse the deep snow and the effort needed to free the nets from the ice were significant, demanding a reserve of strength that their stored provisions could not replenish. This was the core of their struggle now, the increasing difficulty in acquiring sustenance as the winter deepened, pushing them to rely more heavily on what they had already preserved. This shift from the more abundant yields of earlier seasons to the harder-won gains of winter underscored a fundamental truth of their existence. The land, while generous in its time, also demanded constant respect and adaptability. The strategies that had served them well during the warmer months were no longer sufficient, requiring a deeper understanding of the subtle ways life persisted even under a blanket of snow. Bjorn, imparting this wisdom to Finn, ensured that the knowledge would continue to serve their community. The contrast with the broader hunting expeditions of weeks past was stark. Those had involved the thrill of the chase, the challenge of tracking larger animals across open ground, and the satisfaction of a significant kill that could feed many. Now, their efforts were focused on smaller, more hidden quarry, often found near the scarce unfrozen waterways or within the sheltered dens of the forest. This change in approach was not just a matter of preference, but a necessary adaptation to the altered landscape and the behavior of the wild creatures within it. Beyond the immediate need for food, there was also the constant consideration of fuel. The longhouses required a steady supply of wood to maintain their warmth, and the gathering of this fuel was a task that continued even as the snows deepened. The scent of wood smoke, therefore, remained a constant in the air around the settlement, a comforting indicator of continued effort and a necessary defense against the encroaching cold that could chill them to the bone. As Bjorn and Finn returned, their meager haul carefully wrapped, the general quietude of the settlement greeted them. The work of the longhouse continued, the women busy with spinning and mending, their skilled hands weaving warmth into cloth. The rhythmic thud of the loom and the whir of the spinning wheel were the sounds that now dominated the interior spaces, providing a counterpoint to the silence outside. These were the sounds of resilience, of life continuing its essential tasks despite the harshness of the season. The community's survival was not solely dependent on the success of any single hunter or fisherman, but on the collective endurance and the shared knowledge of how to adapt to the changing environment. The careful rationing of stored goods, the communal tending of fires, and the shared effort in crafting warm clothing all spoke to this interconnectedness. Each individual's contribution, no matter how small, was a thread woven into the larger tapestry of their collective survival. The lessons Bjorn offered Finn were not just about hunting. They were about observation, patience, and a deep respect for the natural world. He showed the boy how to read the subtle signs left in the snow, the faint tracks that revealed the presence of creatures often unseen. This understanding was crucial, for as winter tightened its grip, the most valuable resource became not just the game itself, but the knowledge of how and where to find it, a skill passed from one generation to the next. The contemplative question that arose from witnessing such diligence was how a community so dependent on the bounty of nature maintained hope when that bounty seemed to dwindle. It was in these very acts of persistent effort, in the quiet passing of skills, and in the shared acknowledgement of their reliance on one another that the answer lay. The people of Hrafnafjord, through their actions, showed that survival was not merely a matter of luck, but a testament to their unwavering spirit and their deep connection to the land that sustained them. The cycle of seeking sustenance had settled into the bones of the community. Elder Maeve gathered the youngest members of the settlement, their faces still soft with childhood, around the hearth's comforting glow. Finn, his gaze usually fixed on the movements of game, now sat cross-legged, his attention solely on the elder. She held a small bundle of dried herbs, their faint, earthy scent mingling with the ever-present aroma of woodsmoke. The land outside lay locked in a deep slumber, its bounty hidden beneath a thick blanket of snow, which meant that their survival depended not just on what had been stored, but on what could still be coaxed from the earth's hidden reserves. Maeve's gnarled fingers, skilled from countless winters of preparation, gently separated the brittle leaves of a plant known for its resilience. Even under the deepest snow, she began, her voice a low murmur like the rustling of dry reeds. Life persists. The earth remembers the sun's warmth, and so must we. She explained how the roots of this particular herb, even when frozen, held a vital sharpness that could cut through the richness of preserved meats and help prevent the sluggishness that often plagued people during the long months of darkness. This knowledge, passed down through generations, was as crucial as any stored grain, a testament to the enduring wisdom of those who had weathered these winters before. The children watched, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and the solemnity of receiving important counsel. Maeve spoke of the spirits that dwelled within the frost-laden trees and the silent rivers, of the need to show respect to the land even in its dormant state. She described the careful ritual of asking permission before digging, a practice that acknowledged their reliance on forces larger than themselves. It was a delicate balance, this interplay between human effort and the perceived will of the natural world, a constant negotiation that defined their existence. This transmission of knowledge was more than just a lesson. It was a lifeline. The skills needed to survive the deep winter were complex, often subtle, and easily forgotten if not diligently passed from elder to youth. The tension in such moments lay not in conflict between people, but in the quiet urgency of ensuring that this vital chain of understanding remained unbroken. If even a small part of this accumulated wisdom were lost, it could mean hardship, or worse, for those who came after. A stark reminder of their vulnerability. Indeed, Finn, usually a boy of action, absorbed the elder's words with a new kind of focus. He understood that the success of a hunt was only part of the story. Knowing what plants could supplement their diet and when to gather them was equally important. Maeve's demonstration of finding these hidden edibles was a practical lesson in observation, teaching him to look beyond the obvious, to see the signs of life that remained even when the world seemed dead. It was a different kind of hunting, one that required patience and a deep understanding of the earth's rhythms. Indeed, Maeve's teaching extended to the careful preparation of these unearthed treasures. She showed the children how to dry the herbs properly, ensuring their potency would last until spring. The rough texture of the dried leaves against their fingertips provided a tangible connection to the earth's bounty, a contrast to the smooth, cold surfaces they typically encountered. The faint, earthy scent that clung to their hands afterwards was a constant reminder of the life that lay dormant, waiting to be awakened. Remember, Maeve continued, her gaze sweeping over the attentive faces, the winter tests us, but it also teaches us. It teaches us patience, and it teaches us to look closer, to find strength in the smallest of things. Her words were a gentle reassurance, a way of framing the hardships they faced not as mere suffering, but as a profound learning experience. The children listened, the lessons of the frozen land slowly seeping into their young minds, preparing them for the years ahead. The community's reliance on such ancient knowledge was not born of simple tradition, but of necessity. Historical accounts from similar periods across the northern lands consistently detail how societies that maintained a strong connection to their ancestral ways, particularly regarding foraging and understanding the land, were better equipped to weather periods of scarcity. This practice was a cornerstone of their resilience, a bulwark against the unforgiving nature of the climate. A quirky detail often overlooked in the grand narratives of Viking life was the meticulous charting of plant life cycles, even during the depths of winter. While the sagas might speak of raids and voyages, the everyday reality for many involved this quiet, persistent effort to understand and utilize the natural world. This deep ecological knowledge was the silent partner in their survival, often unheralded but undeniably crucial. Currently, a subtle scholarly debate exists regarding the extent to which early Norse communities actively cultivated such winter harvestable plants versus relying solely on wild foraging. While clear evidence of cultivation is limited, the detailed knowledge of wild edibles suggests a sophisticated understanding of their environment that borders on managed ecosystems. Maeve's lessons, therefore, represented a living link to this historical discussion. This deep connection to the Earth's subtle offerings was a crucial part of their survival strategy. It provided a vital supplement to their stored provisions and a means to combat the dietary deficiencies that could weaken even the strongest individual. The very act of seeking out these hidden plants fostered a sense of purpose and engagement, preventing the passive despair that the long winter could otherwise impose. Furthermore, the passing of this knowledge was a communal act that reinforced their social fabric. By gathering the children, Maeve was not only teaching them survival skills, but also integrating them into the broader responsibilities of the community. This shared endeavor created a sense of belonging and mutual reliance, ensuring that the collective strength of the settlement grew with each shared lesson. The children's hushed attention as Maeve spoke, their eager hands reaching out to touch the dried herbs, demonstrated the effectiveness of this direct sensory teaching method. It was a stark contrast to the boisterous activities of summer or the solitary hunts of early winter. This was a quiet, internal strengthening, a planting of seeds in young minds that would bear fruit in future seasons. This focused effort on knowledge transmission would serve them well in the leaner months that lay ahead, reminding them that even when the outward signs of nature seemed to offer nothing, a deeper understanding could reveal hidden sustenance. Such communal knowledge sharing would define this place for years to come. The deep cold had settled over Hrafnfjord, yet the heart of the community pulsed with a different kind of warmth. This was the time for the midwinter feast, a tradition as old as the longhouses themselves, and a vital counterpoint to the isolating grip of the frost. Astrid, whose careful management of stores had seen them through the season's early trials, brought forth her finest preserved meats. Their rich, smoky flavor, a testament to hours spent tending the drying racks and smokehouse. She joined other women who contributed honey cakes, their sweetness a welcome contrast to the usual fare. Each treat a small offering of comfort and abundance. The gathering took place in the main longhouse, where the low ceilings and central hearth seemed to draw everyone closer. Bjorn arrived, his arms laden with the results of his recent successful hunt, adding chunks of roasted game to the communal spread. These contributions were more than just food. They were symbols of individual skill and collective fortune, tangible proofs that their efforts were not in vain. The resonant sound of communal singing, a practice that had been passed down through countless winters, began to fill the space, its harmonies weaving through the murmur of contented voices. This communal meal was a powerful assertion of their shared resilience, a deliberate act to reaffirm the bonds that held them together against the long, dark months. The sharing of food, carefully preserved from harvest or secured through arduous hunts, underscored their mutual dependency. Each person understood that their survival was not an isolated endeavor, but a shared experience, woven from the threads of individual contributions and collective spirit. This sharing fostered a deep sense of belonging, reminding them that even in the harshest conditions, they were not alone. The historical context of these gatherings offered a vital psychological anchor. For generations, people in these northern lands had faced similar challenges, and these feasts served to connect the present community to that lineage of endurance. The elders, their faces etched with the stories of many winters, offered quiet nods of approval, recognizing the familiar patterns of survival playing out before them. Their presence was a constant reminder of the past, grounding the present celebration in a history of overcoming hardship. The overall tension here was not of scarcity, but of maintaining morale and social cohesion. The challenge was to ensure that the spirit of the community did not succumb to the physical pressures of winter. By coming together, by sharing what little they had, and by celebrating their continued existence, they actively countered the isolating tendencies of the season. This conscious effort to bolster their collective spirit was as crucial for survival as the stores of food or the warmth of the fire. The carefully preserved meats, some cured with salt and others smoked over fragrant wood, offered a complex taste profile. The initial salty bite gave way to the deeper smoky notes, a lingering richness that spoke of careful preparation. Among the sweet dates that had been traded from farther south, the honey cakes provided a different kind of sweetness, lighter and more floral. The air, filled with the mingled aromas of cooked food and the faint, clean scent of the pine used to construct their longhouses, seemed to carry a promise of enduring warmth and nourishment. Astrid watched as the younger children, their faces alight with excitement, eagerly sampled the different offerings. Finn, who had spent much of the day assisting Bjorn, now sat with a full belly, listening to the elders recount tales of past feasts. This intergenerational passing of experience was a vital part of the tradition. The younger ones learned not just about the food, but about the meaning behind the gathering. They understood, even if subconsciously, that this act of communal celebration was a cornerstone of their ability to withstand the long frost. The historical impact of such events cannot be overstated. These feasts were not mere diversions, they were cultural mechanisms for reinforcing social order, fostering cooperation, and transmitting the collective memory of resilience. They provided a clear, tangible demonstration of what could be achieved when everyone contributed, and when the community banded together for a common purpose. The shared abundance, however modest, became a powerful symbol of their collective strength. The preparation for the feast involved contributions from every corner of the settlement. From the careful preservation of meat and vegetables by women like Astrid, to the successful hunting expeditions of men like Bjorn, and the trade that brought rarer items like honey, it was a collective effort. This shared undertaking meant that the success of the feast was directly tied to the successful efforts of many individuals, reinforcing the interconnectedness of their lives. The sensory experience of the feast was deeply tied to the success of their preparations. The richness of the roasted meats, many of them tougher cuts that had been preserved through careful drying and smoking, offered a satisfying, hearty flavor. The sweetness of the honey cakes, a rare treat, provided a delightful contrast, their texture soft and yielding. The low, resonant sound of communal singing filled the longhouse, creating an atmosphere of shared joy and belonging, a powerful counterpoint to the external silence of the winter. This communal gathering served as a powerful illustration of their solidarity. The act of sharing food, especially during a time when resources were naturally constrained, was a direct manifestation of their mutual trust and commitment. It was a conscious effort to reaffirm their bonds, ensuring that no one felt truly isolated or forgotten. Such events were not simply celebrations. They were vital social rituals that strengthened the fabric of their community against the harsh realities of their environment. In the aftermath of the feast, the echoes of song and the lingering sense of cooked food remained. The community had once again demonstrated its ability to find moments of joy and connection, reinforcing the social ties that were so essential for their survival. The careful inventory of the remaining food and the shared effort in cleaning up after the meal underscored the practical nature of their celebration, a reminder that the work of winter continued. These shared moments of fellowship had woven themselves into the fabric of daily life. A subtle shift in the air offered a balm to weary souls. Kalin, his hands still bearing the rough texture of timber and tar, directed his crew with a renewed vigor. They worked to mend the longship, its hull groaning from its encounter with the encroaching ice. This restoration was more than mere repair. It was a tangible act of defiance against the closing grip of winter, a preparation for the opportunities that would surely follow the thaw. Astrid, stepping from the warm embrace of the longhouse, noticed the lengthening of daylight. The sun, though still low, lingered longer each afternoon, casting a softer, more hopeful light across the snow-dusted landscape. This slight increase in daylight, a mere whisper of the coming spring, stirred a quiet optimism within the settlement, prompting hushed conversations about future voyages and the vital task of planting. The cracks in the great river's ice were more than just fissures in frozen water. They were omens of change, signaling the slow retreat of winter's dominance. The sound of water beginning its journey again, a gentle dripping from the eaves of the longhouses, and a soft gurgle from beneath the thickening ice, replaced the oppressive silence that had held the land for months. For Kalin's crew, this meant a change in their immediate focus. The arduous task of securing the longship against the relentless cold shifted to preparing its timbers and seams for the demands of spring sea travel. Their movements, once hurried and focused on preservation, now took on a more methodical, forward-looking rhythm, a practical adaptation to the environment's evolving mood. Across the settlement, small groups began to assess the stores that would be needed for the warmer months. Astrid, remembering the careful lessons of her mother and grandmother, carefully examined the precious seeds saved from the previous harvest. These small, dry kernels represented not just food, but the future itself, a promise of renewal that the harsh winter had threatened to extinguish. The process of checking them, ensuring their viability, was a delicate act of hope, a bridge between the endured hardship and the anticipated bounty of the land. Each seed inspected was a testament to the community's foresight and their deep connection to the Earth's cyclical rhythm. The communal efforts in repairing the longship became a focal point for the settlement's collective energy. While the men worked on the vessel's structure, women gathered treated animal hides and carefully prepared them for use in sailcloth or reinforcing the ship's rigging. This shared labor, a continuation of the cooperative spirit that had seen them through the deepest frost, demonstrated a society built on mutual reliance. The very tools they used, hammers, awls, needles, felt familiar in their hands, extensions of generations of craftsmanship. The faint, clean scent of freshly worked leather mingled with the sharper smell of pine pitch, a familiar olfactory blend that spoke of purpose and preparedness. Even the smallest actions were imbued with a new sense of possibility. Children, once confined to the immediate vicinity of the longhouses, ventured further, their laughter echoing as they chased each other across the thawing ground. They collected smooth stones, washed clean by the melting snow, and examined the first brave shoots of hardy greenery pushing through the softening earth. These simple discoveries were celebrated, a visible confirmation that life persisted, that the grip of winter was indeed loosening. It was a subtle but profound shift, a tangible reminder that the long, dark days were giving way to the lighter, more active season. Callan, while overseeing the caulking of the longship's hull, paused to admire the work of a younger crewman. The lad, no older than Finn, was meticulously applying the sticky pitch, his brow furrowed in concentration. This passing of skill, the patient instruction from seasoned hands to eager new ones, was vital. It ensured that the knowledge of shipbuilding, so essential for their trade and survival, would continue. A light-hearted jest about the boy's earnestness drew a shy grin, a moment of simple camaraderie that punctuated the serious work. Such small exchanges were the mortar that held their community together, even as they focused on the larger task. This period of transition was not without its anxieties, however. The memory of past winters, of ships lost and harvests failed, lingered in the minds of the elders. They spoke of the importance of not being lulled into complacency by the first signs of thaw, reminding the younger generation that the elements could still be unpredictable. This cautionary wisdom, passed down through countless seasons, served as a vital counterpoint to the burgeoning optimism. It was a reminder that while the environment was changing, the need for vigilance and preparedness remained paramount. A scholar might debate the precise frequency of late spring storms in this region, but for the people of Hrafnfjord, it was a matter of immediate, lived experience. The ongoing scholarly debate about the precise methods of Viking ship maintenance during the winter months, particularly regarding ice damage, offered little comfort to Callan as he surveyed a particularly stubborn seam that needed sealing. His focus was on practical application, on ensuring the integrity of the vessel against the returning sea. The wood, weathered by months of cold and strain, required careful attention, a deep understanding of its nature. The sound of the hammer's rhythmic tap, tap, tapping against the hull provided a steady, reassuring beat, a sound that spoke of resilience and the ongoing effort to overcome the challenges presented by their environment. Astrid, meanwhile, found herself contemplating the planting schedule for the coming season. She recalled her grandmother's insistence on specific days for sowing certain crops, based on lunar cycles and the perceived mood of the earth. This was not mere superstition, but a body of accumulated knowledge refined over centuries about the delicate balance required for successful cultivation. The quality of the soil, the amount of moisture retained from the melt, and the very air's feel were all considered. This deep, intuitive understanding of the land was a heritage passed from one generation to the next. The preparations for spring were a testament to the community's adaptive spirit. They understood that survival was not a static state, but a continuous process of adjustment and response to the ever-changing world around them. The community's collective effort in repairing the longship and tending to the precious seeds was more than just work. It was an affirmation of their shared purpose and their unyielding determination to face whatever the seasons might bring. The dripping sound of melting ice, once a symbol of winter's stubborn hold, was now transforming into a promise of renewal. The subtle shift in the air offered a welcome change. Kalen's crew diligently continued their work on the longship, their spirits lifted by the noticeable change in the atmosphere. Astrid noted the extended daylight hours, a welcome sight after the deep twilight of winter, as she stepped from her longhouse. A subtle shift in the environment was underway. The ice began to crack, and the first signs of melting appeared, prompting early preparations for the spring thaw, including the careful inspection of stored seeds and the clearing of minor waterways. A renewed sense of optimism began to permeate the settlement, and conversations soon turned to the prospect of future voyages and the upcoming planting season. The environmental shift from deep winter to the beginnings of thaw directly impacted their activities and outlook, marking a turning point in their enduring struggle against the harsh climate. The tension shifted from the vulnerability of their technology to the challenge of restoring it to full functionality, preparing for the opportunities that spring would undoubtedly bring, as the community found its rhythm in this new thawing reality. The softening earth and the lengthening daylight signaled a profound shift in the rhythm of life at Hrafnafjord. Astrid moved with a renewed sense of purpose, her hands now sifting through the carefully preserved seeds that had survived the long winter. These small, dry kernels represented more than just future meals. They were the tangible embodiment of hope, a promise of life returning to the frozen land. She worked within the familiar longhouse, the scent of cured hides and lingering wood smoke now mingling with the fresher, earthy aroma of the awakening soil. Her focus was on the varied needs of their fields, recalling Elder Maeve's quiet instruction. The elder, her movements slower, but her mind as sharp as ever, would guide her, pointing out the subtle differences between seeds that thrived in sun-drenched fields and those that preferred the dappled light of the forest's edge. Their shared task was a testament to the knowledge passed down through generations, a vital thread connecting the arduous past to the hopeful future, and Astrid felt the weight of that inheritance with every seed she sorted. This meticulous preparation was not a solitary endeavor. Across Hrafnafjord, other women were engaged in similar tasks, their collective efforts a quiet hum of activity. Children, their faces bright with the promise of warmer days, helped gather dried herbs that would be used to season the coming harvest, their small hands mirroring the larger, more practiced movements of their elders. This communal involvement in agriculture underscored the deep interdependence of the community, where the success of one family was woven into the well-being of all. The transition from winter's scarcity to spring's potential brought with it a unique set of challenges and responsibilities. While the deep frost had tested their resilience, the period of thaw demanded careful planning and execution to ensure the bounty of the coming summer. The land, though still damp from melting snow, held the promise of nourishment, and the community understood that their diligent preparation now would directly influence their survival through the next cycle. Astrid found herself wrestling with the nuances of planting. Elder Maeve had emphasized the importance of understanding the soil's temperament, a lesson learned from countless seasons of observation. The elder spoke of the earth as a living entity, one that responded to both care and neglect. This was a different kind of challenge than the stark necessities of winter. It was a test of wisdom, patience, and a deep respect for the natural world that sustained them. The elder's gentle guidance often involved testing the seeds for viability, a practice honed over centuries. Maeve would place a few seeds in her palm, feeling their texture, a subtle pressure applied to gauge their readiness. "The earth," she would murmur, her voice a low, resonant sound, "waits for the right touch. Too eager and you wound the soil. Too slow and the chance passes." These were lessons etched not just in memory, but in the very fabric of their survival. The communal effort in preparing the fields was a powerful demonstration of their solidarity. Men and women worked together to clear fallen branches and stones, their shared labor forging a palpable connection between them. The tasks might have been arduous, requiring the strength of many, but there was a shared understanding that this work was for everyone, a collective investment in the future of Hrafnafjord. Meanwhile, the repair of the longship, Kallin's vessel, was nearing completion. The timbers, scarred by the ice's unforgiving embrace, were being carefully mended. This revival of their seafaring capability represented a turning point, allowing them to once again consider voyages for trade and exploration, activities that had been suspended by the deep winter, thus connecting the agricultural preparations to their wider interactions with the world. Astrid listened as Maeve spoke of specific planting times, correlating them with the movements of the stars and the observed behavior of animals returning from their winter sojourns. This ancient knowledge, passed from generation to generation, was a vital part of their agricultural practice. It was a complex tapestry of observation, tradition, and practical experience, ensuring that the seed sown would have the best chance of growth. The children, their attention rapt, would practice mimicking the elders' gestures, their own small hands carefully handling the precious seeds. This act of passing knowledge, of ensuring its continuity, was a fundamental pillar of their society. It was not merely about teaching how to plant, but about instilling a respect for the land and an understanding of the cyclical nature of life, a concept as essential as the sun's return. The seeds themselves held a subtle fragrance, dry and papery, a stark contrast to the damp, fertile smell that would soon rise from the tilled earth. Astrid ran a thumb over a row of barley seeds, feeling their rough texture, and imagined them nestled in the ground, drawing life from the soil. This careful handling, this gentle touch, was an unspoken communication with the future, a silent prayer for a successful harvest. As the days grew longer, the warmth of the returning sun, though still gentle, could be felt on the skin. It was a sensation that brought a quiet optimism, a lifting of the spirits after the long confinement of winter. This subtle change in the environment was mirrored in the community's outlook, a collective leaning towards the abundance that spring promised. The ongoing efforts in the fields, the steady work of planting, and the continued repairs to the longship all contributed to the larger narrative of their resilience. Each action, from the smallest seed to the sturdiest timber, played a part in the community's enduring ability to adapt and thrive. Such moments shaped the character of this northern living. The final remnants of winter's grip loosened, and the river that flowed through Hrafnfjord began to stir from its icy slumber. For weeks, the community had focused on the immediate necessities of surviving the deepest cold, tending to hearths and preserving dwindling stores. Yet, as the first whispers of thaw carried the scent of damp earth, a new challenge emerged, one that demanded not just endurance, but collective action and forward-thinking preparation for the coming growing season. A significant portion of the river, a lifeline for irrigation and a potential source of springtime fish, had become obstructed by a tangle of fallen trees and accumulated ice, a testament to the winter's fierce power. Astrid, whose hands were accustomed to the careful sorting of dried berries and the mending of woolens, felt a stirring of a different kind of purpose. She observed the growing unease among the farmers, whose fields lay parched, awaiting the meltwater that the river's obstruction would delay. The elders, too, expressed their concerns, recalling how such blockages in years past had hampered the planting, leading to leaner harvests and increased hardship. It was clear that simply waiting for nature to clear the path was no longer a viable option. The community's future prosperity depended on their active intervention, a shared endeavor that would require everyone's contribution and ingenuity to overcome. Bjorn, ever practical, surveyed the partially frozen waterway from the bank, his gaze sharp. He saw the immense effort required to dislodge the heavy timbers and the treacherous nature of working on the shifting ice. He knew that this was not a task for a few strong arms. It would necessitate a coordinated push, a clear understanding of each person's strengths, and a shared commitment to a common goal. The thought of the planting season drawing closer and the need for the river to flow freely weighed on his mind, urging him to consider how such a daunting task might be approached step by painstaking step. The decision to tackle the river blockage was made during a community gathering held under the pale, strengthening sun. Elder Maeve, her voice resonating with the wisdom of many seasons, spoke of the importance of working together, reminding them that the land provided for those who respected and cared for it. She recalled a story, passed down through generations, of a similar obstruction cleared by the combined efforts of their ancestors, using clever leverage and well-timed movements. This historical precedent, coupled with the pressing reality of the delayed thaw, galvanized the villagers, transforming a daunting prospect into a necessary undertaking for their collective well-being. Consequently, the work began the following day. Men, women, and even the older children gathered along the river's edge, their movements purposeful. Bjorn and a few other skilled woodworkers began assessing the main timbers, planning where to cut and how to best use ropes made from cured animal hides to create leverage. Astrid, alongside others, prepared simple meals and warm drinks, ensuring that those laboring would have sustenance, their presence a quiet testament to the community's shared investment in the success of this vital project. This division of labor, while seemingly minor, was crucial in maintaining efficiency and ensuring that no one was overburdened. The initial efforts to dislodge the largest logs proved more challenging than anticipated. The ice, though thinning, still clung stubbornly to the submerged timbers, making them incredibly heavy and difficult to maneuver. One particularly thick beam, jammed sideways against a rock formation, resisted all their combined pulling. A nervous murmur rippled through the workers as their ropes strained, a subtle tension rising from the sheer physical resistance of the natural world against their determined efforts. The sheer scale of the blockage began to reveal itself, a daunting obstacle that required more than just brute strength. This setback prompted a moment of collective reflection, a brief pause where the villagers considered alternative strategies. Bjorn, observing the way a smaller, detached ice flow had been nudged by the river's current, had an idea. He suggested that they focus on weakening the ice around the stubborn log, using heavy stone hammers and sharpened iron tools to break it into smaller, more manageable pieces. This approach, while requiring careful execution to avoid damaging the wood itself, offered a more practical solution to the unyielding resistance they had encountered. It was a clever adaptation born from observing the subtle forces at play. The adoption of this new tactic marked a turning point in the day's labor. The rhythmic clang of hammers on ice echoed along the riverbank, each blow chipping away at the frozen mass. Children, their faces streaked with dirt and exertion, helped clear away the broken ice, their small hands surprisingly efficient. The air grew cooler around them as the water began to flow more freely into the cleared channels, carrying away the smaller fragments. This collaborative effort, the shared exertion, and the tangible progress fostered a sense of shared accomplishment, knitting the community closer together. Amidst the hard work, a moment of lightheartedness emerged when young Finn, eager to impress, tried to dislodge a medium-sized log with a single mighty heave, only to stumble backward and land softly in a pile of snow. His father, Bjorn, chuckled, a rare sound of amusement that drew smiles from the other workers. It was a reminder that even in the face of such demanding tasks, the human spirit needed moments of levity to endure, and the shared laughter served to further bind them together in their common purpose, easing the strain of the labor. The discovery of a perfectly preserved bronze brooch, intricately carved with swirling patterns, lodged deep within the ice near the riverbed. This artifact, likely lost by a traveler or a trader from a distant land generations ago, sparked a brief fascination. Elder Maeve speculated that it might have been dropped during a swift river crossing before the area was settled, offering a glimpse into the long history of human passage through this very landscape, a whisper from forgotten times that added another layer to their shared endeavor. The scholarly debate among historians regarding the extent of trade routes connecting these northern settlements to more distant cultures resurfaced in the minds of those who had heard the tales. While many believed such journeys were perilous and infrequent during the deep winter months, the discovery of the brooch suggested that perhaps some determined individuals braved the elements even then, seeking to exchange goods and ideas. This find served as a tangible, if small, piece of evidence hinting at a broader world beyond their immediate fjord, prompting renewed discussions about the reach of their people. As the afternoon waned, the river began to flow with a steadier, more robust current. The main blockage was significantly reduced, with most of the large timbers now either freed or positioned to be easily removed later. The workers, weary but satisfied, gathered their tools, their muscles aching from the unaccustomed labor. The visual evidence of their collective effort was undeniable. A visibly altered river, ready to once again nourish the fields and potentially yield its bounty of fish. The task was far from over, but the most formidable obstacle had been overcome. The promise of the spring planting season now felt closer, more attainable. The work on the river had not only cleared a path for the essential meltwater, but had also strengthened the bonds of cooperation within the community. It had demonstrated, once again, that by combining their individual skills and working in unison, they could overcome even the most imposing challenges presented by their environment. The collective spirit, honed by the long winter, now found a new, purposeful expression in preparing for the future. The clearing of the river took deeper root among the people. The unseasonably warm weather of the last few days brought a welcome change, but it also presented a new set of trials for the people of Hrafnfjord. As the ice receded from the riverbanks, it carried with it fallen branches and debris, creating a dangerous dam that threatened to flood the lower fields where the first fragile shoots of barley were beginning to emerge. Elder Maeve, her gaze fixed on the swollen water, knew that immediate action was needed. She gathered Astrid, Bjorn, and Kalin, her voice steady as she outlined a plan. A communal effort to clear the obstruction, a task requiring everyone's strength and ingenuity. Bjorn readily agreed, envisioning the tools they would need, while Astrid, ever practical, began to consider the logistical challenge of feeding such a working party throughout the day. Kalin, his ship still undergoing repairs, offered his own sturdy timber for any necessary bracing, a gesture of goodwill that underscored the shared responsibility they all felt. The chosen section of the river, where a thick tangle of ice-laden branches had snagged on submerged rocks, became a hive of focused activity. Bjorn directed a group of younger men, their muscles straining as they used heavy levers fashioned from oak to dislodge the larger pieces of debris. the air filled with the sharp clang of metal on wood and the gruff shouts of encouragement as they worked against the insistent push of the current. Astrid, meanwhile, coordinated the women, their task to prepare a hearty meal that would sustain the workers through the arduous labor. The smell of roasting dried meat and simmering root vegetables wafted from a temporary hearth set up near the riverbank, a comforting anchor against the raw, damp chill that still clung to the morning. Kalin and his crew worked methodically to secure the unstable banks with timbers, ensuring that their efforts to clear the river did not lead to further erosion and loss of precious farmland. As the day wore on, the initial enthusiasm of the workers began to wane, replaced by a deep weariness. The stubborn ice, slow to melt, clung to the branches with surprising tenacity, making each heave and pull an immense struggle. This arduous effort tested their resolve, and Bjorn noticed some of the younger men faltering, their movements becoming sluggish. He called for a brief rest, encouraging them to drink from the water skins and share the simple fare prepared by Astrid. During this respite, Elder Maeve shared a story of their ancestors who had faced similar challenges, their success hinging on unwavering perseverance and the belief that every individual's contribution, no matter how small, was vital to the collective outcome. This reminder of their heritage seemed to rekindle a spark, and when they returned to their tasks, their movements were more determined, their focus sharper. The unpredictable nature of the spring thaw soon presented a new threat. The warmer temperatures, while beneficial for melting the river's icy grip, also increased the flow of water, causing the river to swell and threaten the newly planted barley fields. The earthworks that Kalin's crew had begun to reinforce the banks were proving insufficient against the rising water. Astrid, observing the encroaching dampness on the edges of the fields, quickly recognized the danger, her thoughts turning to the limited time they had to protect their vulnerable crops. She conferred with Bjorn, and together they decided to divert some of the workers to reinforce the embankments with hastily gathered stones and more tightly packed earth, a race against the rising water that demanded a rapid reallocation of their labor and resources, forcing them to prioritize immediate agricultural security over other pressing tasks. Further complicating their efforts, a flock of geese, normally a welcome sight signaling the arrival of spring, arrived acting erratically. Instead of their usual graceful flight patterns, they wheeled and squawked with a frantic intensity, some even diving towards the water with an unusual aggression. Bjorn, an experienced hunter who understood the subtle language of the wild, found their behavior deeply unsettling. He observed them from a distance, noting how their actions seemed to mirror the growing unease he felt about the river's unpredictable surge. He wondered if this unusual behavior was a sign of a larger disturbance in the natural world, perhaps a warning of more drastic changes to come that would require a deeper understanding of the environment than they currently possessed. The decision to prioritize the construction of more robust earthworks to protect the barley fields meant that fewer hands were available for the river clearance. This created a tension between the urgent need to restore the river's normal flow and the immediate necessity of safeguarding their nascent harvest. Astrid and Bjorn, conferring with Elder Maeve, had to make a difficult choice about which task received the bulk of their communal effort. They ultimately decided to dedicate the majority of their workforce to the embankment reinforcement, understanding that a flooded field meant no harvest at all, while a partially cleared river, though still a concern, could be managed with less immediate intensity. This meant that some of the debris would remain, creating a new challenge for later in the season, a compromise born of necessity that weighed heavily on their minds. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the water, the communal effort on the river's edge began to wind down. The most significant obstructions had been removed, and the river, though still high, flowed more freely, its waters now a murky brown with the mud stirred from the riverbed. The workers, their bodies aching and their faces streaked with grime and sweat, gathered the tools and began their walk back towards the longhouses. The air was filled with a shared sense of accomplishment, but also with the unspoken awareness of the lingering challenges. The partially cleared river served as a visible reminder of the compromises they had made, and the threat of flooding, though somewhat mitigated, still hung over the fields. The strange behavior of the birds, a detail Bjorn continued to ponder, also added an element of unease to the otherwise hopeful transition to spring. Through these challenging days of river clearing and dike reinforcement, the people of Hrafnfjord had adapted once more to the shifting demands of the natural world. The unusual behavior of the birds continued to unsettle the people of Hrafnfjord. Instead of their usual patterns, flocks of ravens and crows gathered in odd, silent formations, their dark eyes seeming to watch the villagers with unnerving stillness. Astrid, always observant of the natural world, felt a prickle of unease whenever she saw them, remembering Elder Maeve's tales of omens carried on the wings of feathered creatures. She found herself pausing her work, her gaze drawn to the sky, a question forming in her mind about what these deviations from the norm might portend for their survival. This persistent unease prompted a gathering by the central hearth, where the community's elders, including Maeve, discussed the signs. Maeve explained that while some avian patterns could indicate weather shifts, the current behavior was beyond her experience, hinting at deeper disturbances in the land's balance. She spoke of ancient beliefs where unusual animal actions were seen as messages, perhaps warnings of unseen dangers or blessings for a particular path. The scholars who studied the sagas of old noted that such widespread animal strangeness was rare, often preceding significant environmental shifts that demanded careful observation. Meanwhile, across the longhouse, the focus shifted to the crucial task of seed selection for the upcoming planting season. Astrid worked alongside other women, meticulously sorting through the precious grains and legumes that had been stored throughout the winter. Each handful of seeds represented not just food, but the continuation of their way of life, a tangible link to future harvests. The air, while still cool, held a gentler quality, a whispered promise of the sun's returning strength. Yet the weight of decisions about what to plant and where to plant it pressed upon them. The community faced a difficult choice regarding the planting fields. Some low-lying areas, recently cleared from the river's encroaching waters, were fertile but prone to sudden inundation from the unpredictable thaw. Higher ground offered greater safety, but was less rich, demanding more labor to prepare. This presented a stark dilemma: planting the most valuable crops in the riskier, more fertile soil, or opting for a safer, less bountiful yield. The elders debated the best course, their discussions filled with the practicalities of soil management and the wisdom of past harvests, reminding everyone that a single poor planting could impact them for seasons to come. The scarcity of certain types of grain added another layer to their deliberations. Some of the stored seeds were damaged by dampness, a quirk of their preservation methods that was now evident. This meant that the amount of hardy barley essential for their staple bread was less than hoped, forcing them to consider planting even less of it or trying to supplement with other, less familiar grains. A historical fact noted by traveling traders was that reliance on a single crop could be catastrophic, a lesson they were now being reminded of in the most direct way possible as they weighed their planting options. This predicament was further complicated by the unusual behavior of the birds, which continued unabated. Finn, Bjorn's son, excitedly shared a story he'd heard from a passing trader about how in distant lands people sometimes offered small portions of their grain to appease or communicate with nature's spirits when such strange animal occurrences were noted. It was a quirky detail, one that sparked both wonder and practical consideration, as the idea of leaving offerings of grain, however small, was a new concept for their community. Ultimately, a consensus began to form, driven by a blend of caution and necessity. They decided to allocate the most fertile lower fields to a smaller, carefully chosen amount of their hardiest barley and a quick-growing variety of peas, recognizing the risk but hoping for a swift, abundant yield. The higher, drier ground would be dedicated to the bulk of their remaining grains and root vegetables, a more secure, if less immediately rewarding endeavor. This division of labor and planting strategy was a communal decision, forged through patient discussion and shared understanding of the land's temper. The elders, while acknowledging the communal decision, also recognized the need to preserve their collective knowledge. Elder Maeve began showing Astrid how to identify the subtle differences in the soil that would best support each chosen crop, and how to prepare small, protected patches for experimental planting of less common hardy greens. This meticulous transfer of farming practices, honed over generations, was vital, especially with the unsettling omens of the natural world around them. This demanding period, with its blend of anxious decision-making and practical preparation, left its mark on those who lived through it. As the lingering embers of our Viking exploration glow softly, let their warmth guide you into a peaceful slumber. We've journeyed through the stark beauty of the Nordic winters, a time when the biting winds swept across lands like Lofoten, and the very ice seemed to grip the fjords. Imagine the hearty fare, the carefully preserved meats and fermented foods, fueling lives lived with unyielding strength. Think of the shared stories around the fire, the skilled hands mending nets or carving wood, a quiet testament to their enduring spirit. This resilience, this ability to find comfort and purpose amidst hardship, is a legacy that whispers through the ages. Let that same enduring strength cradle you now. Rest deeply, dear ones, and may your dreams be as peaceful as the quiet dawn after a long, challenging night. Sleep well.